Hello and welcome. My name is Haley Pestner, and I serve as a manager in the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning. I will be the host of this featured presentation with Dr. Peggy Sundstrom. Dr. Peggy Sundstrom is the lead faculty for the PhD program in Organizational Development and Leadership in the Forbes School of Business and Technology. She has been a faculty member first with the University of the Rockies and now with Ashford University since 2009. She has a passion for working with students to help them achieve their lifelong goal of obtaining a doctoral degree and takes special pride in guiding students through the dissertation process. Dr. Sundstrom is an active volunteer in support of continental conservation through Ducks Unlimited and serves on the board of directors for Ducks Unlimited of Mexico. She and her husband, Mick, live in the Denver area, and live in the Denver area with 3 golden retrievers and a Labrador puppy they are raising to be a guide dog for the blind. As we begin this panel discussion, please know that your microphones will be muted for this presentation, but I encourage you to post questions and comments in the chat. Also, keep your eye on the chat for a link to a helpful session feedback survey. Thank you. Dr. Sundstrom?
Thank you very much, Haley. Appreciate that nice introduction. I'd like to first introduce our panelists. We have with us today Dr. Gary Clayton, who graduated in 2018 with a Doctor of Psychology degree in Mediation and Conflict Resolution. Gary lives in the Dallas, Texas area. We're also joined by Dr. Nancy Herbert, who graduated in 2019 with a Doctor of Philosophy degree in Organizational Development and Leadership. Nancy lives in the Northern Colorado area. Dr. Todd Fiore also graduated in 2019 with a Doctor of Philosophy degree in Education. Todd recently moved from Colorado to Florida to pursue a career opportunity. And finally, Dr. Janine Duran graduated just this year in 2020 with a Doctor of Philosophy degree in Human Services. Janine lives in the Denver, Colorado area. Each of our panelists will introduce themselves more fully in just a couple of minutes. But first, some thoughts about why we put together this panel presentation. You know, the literature can tell us what contributes to success in a doctoral program and what kinds of support is necessary for online doctoral students and what contributes to timely completion of a dissertation or applied doctoral project. But that's not what we're really interested in here. We wanted to hear from students, our Ashford University students, to find out what their experiences were, and importantly, how they view their academic achievement and how they are using their doctoral degree. So as background, students who enroll in an Ashford doctoral program come from many different backgrounds. Most are older than a doctoral student in a traditional institution and bring with them a lot of relevant experience in their field of study. And most are seeking higher or different levels of responsibility in their field. Many of our students are members of the armed forces who wish to achieve either higher military rank or are preparing to enter civilian careers after leaving the military. For many of these students, attending anything other than an online institution would be impossible. Some of our students are seasoned professionals who want the advanced degree for the purpose of teaching in higher education or switching fields or careers. And finally, some of our students are current educators without a terminal degree who want a doctoral degree to advance as an educator. But back to that question of why students pursue a doctoral degree. That's one question we'll address today during this panel presentation. Certainly, students enrolled in a doctoral program can have many different objectives in mind, including personal and professional pride in that very great accomplishment of earning a doctoral degree. Positions in higher education, teaching, research, and administration often require a doctoral degree, but few other types of positions require a doctoral degree in the social sciences. As one job hunting website noted, very few jobs actually require that you have a PhD. You know, I spent some time reviewing books and articles and some internet kinds of posts that revealed a great deal of information that advises people for or against pursuing a doctoral degree. And the advice ranges from headings such as 5 reasons why you should pursue a doctoral degree to 10 reasons why you should not pursue a doctoral degree. And there's some very thoughtful discussions on the relative value of a doctoral degree. However, I submit that most students, certainly students here at Ashford, probably don't decide to start a doctoral degree later in life for purely pragmatic, career-oriented reason. They're more likely to have an emotion or a psychological reason for pursuing a degree, like fulfillment of a dream, a desire to do something no one else in their family has accomplished, or to achieve a specific personal or professional goal. So these are some of the ideas we want to explore with our panelists today. What were they doing before they decided to pursue a degree? And what are the primary reasons for doing so? What experiences did they have during their doctoral program that either supported them in achieving their goals or perhaps stood in their way? What it is about earning a doctoral degree that has helped guide decisions and professional opportunities they found or pursued after graduation, and what they're doing now that underscores the relevance of their degree. And importantly, I would like to know what advice they might offer to someone considering pursuit of a doctoral degree in their field. So with that as a little bit of background, let's start by asking each of our panelists to spend 2 or 3 minutes providing a little bit of background about themselves. Gary, you're the earliest graduate among our group. What were you doing before you entered your doctoral program? And what are some of the primary reasons you decided to pursue your degree?
Okay, can you all hear me first of all? Okay, good. Well, I was originally, when I first started out and got out of school, I got an undergraduate degree in applied engineering mathematics. And I liked the sciences, I really did. And I basically started a little consulting firm, like IT consulting firm, and retired, and then went broke about a year later playing in the stock market. So but during the process, I did some work for my church. And one of the things I did was negotiate a deal for them. And the deal went real well, but the church split in half. I'm going a long way to tell you what happened. So I figured I could do it better. So I was listening to NPR one day and I heard on the radio, become a professional peacemaker. So I took my first mediation course, liked it, got a master's degree in it, and really, really enjoyed it. Okay. And so I was doing mediations and arbitrations, and I went to a cocktail party, and I'm a lifelong learner. So I wanted to get some more. I like learning stuff. I went to a cocktail party, and a couple of professors that were there, and they were in private practice. I was talking to them about getting a doctorate in mediation and dispute resolution, and they discouraged me from doing it. They said you shouldn't do it. Now I knew at the time they were bragging about getting about $18,000 a day for their consulting work. So my wife was listening to that. She said, you know, if they don't want you to do it, you probably should go ahead and get your degree. So she was 100% behind me doing it, and it was something I wanted to do. Okay, so that was what triggered me to go back, because I wanted to do it, and then they didn't want me to have it, so I went ahead and did that. And by the way, I ran into one of those guys not long ago in a competitive situation and won against him. So that was the reason. Okay.
Thanks for that little bit of background. That's great motivation.
Okay.
Nancy, how about you? Tell us what you were doing before you started your degree and what the primary reason was for pursuing the doctorate.
Thanks so much for inviting us here today, Dr. Sundstrom. This is really a fun panel and some great people here. When I first decided to go towards a doctorate degree, it was about research. Actually, the impetus was about my passion that I had developed in board governance field. I had already started researching board governance and the work that I was involved in through credit unions throughout the nation and my work with them. And the more I learned about board governance and how important it was for boards to develop themselves and to display leadership and to research best practices, I learned that there was probably something I could contribute to that. And what might that be? Well, I learned that once that the age-old tale about the underrepresentation of women on boards was an issue that really made my passion flare up. And so I decided to delve into that research. And at the same time I decided to do that, I was beginning my doctoral journey. And in that doctoral journey, I was able to couple my passion, looking for what research might be meaningful in the field and what I might be able to contribute later through my findings, and hopefully guide boards to being high-performing boards. So that's the long and the short of it, but it's deeply rooted in the feminist theory.
Thanks, Nancy. Todd, why don't you jump in here? What were you doing, and what made you get started again?
I wish it was something as grand as wanting to contribute and wanting to do something like that. For me, honestly, it was as simple, or you may say petty, as the fact that I'm the oldest of 12 grandchildren, and I was the first in the family among the grandchildren to get a master's. And then 3 other of my cousins earned master's degrees. And I kind of felt like I had to stay ahead of the game. Now, doctorate is something that I'd always wanted to do, but really that was my intrinsic motivation to get started, or at least the impetus to get me started, was just competition within my family to achieve academically. And it wasn't until I actually started that I realized that this is really my passion, education. And I feel very fortunate that I was able to find it.
That's great. A little competition. I love that. Both you and Gary had competition to get going. That's very interesting. Janine, your most recent graduate, what were you doing before you started, and what were the primary reasons for undertaking all this?
So before I completed my doctorate, I was working in basically health and human services. I just didn't have the doctorate in human services to build ethos in the field. And funny enough, when I was 16, and a junior in high school, I had written my first resume. And in that resume, my objective was to earn a doctoral degree and to receive that in psychology, which at the time I didn't realize, human services and psychology kind of aligned with one another. But I did end up receiving that in human services. And initially, after my first 2 years after high school, I ended up dropping out of college. And so I just returned to school 10 years ago to finish my bachelor's degree, and then completed my, and I completed that in 2010, and then completed my my master's in 2015, and then completed my doctorate just now. And so really it's something that I had always wanted to do, and was able to complete all of the degrees here within the past 10 years.
And if I remember, Janine, you were graduating about the same time that your son was graduating from high school. Do I have that right?
Yes, that is correct. So
and you beat him out by just about that much, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Just beat him. So that was a great feeling.
So, kind of with that as background, I'd like you to reflect and maybe bounce off of each other a little bit. What did you expect the outcome to be? Not what was the outcome, but what did you expect it would be like, or what did you expect to happen when you finished your degree? If you can kind of roll back the tapes and think about where you were before, what did you think it was going to be like? Gary was going to go find those guys from the cocktail party. I know that, but what did you expect the outcome would be? Because I'll just reflect that when I earned my degree, I didn't quite know exactly what I would do, but I knew that it would put me down a road that much further towards being independent and having opportunities that I didn't see available for me. How about for you guys? Jump in, or I'll pick on somebody.
Okay, I'll tell you, I felt like I was going to feel different. I felt like I was going to be different. I thought there was going to be some kind of it's sort of like on There Can Be Only One, you cut the guy's head off and lightning comes out of the sky and you light up and stuff. I kind of thought I was going to have that kind of a metamorphosis, okay? And it didn't happen, but that's what I was expecting. a sudden have this enlightenment that I didn't have before. But it, it doesn't happen that way. It's not an incremental change, but I'll just say that's what I was expecting. So.
Yeah. How about the others of you?
I shared a similar experience in that I expected there to wake up feeling a lot different and to have a lot of opportunities just present themselves. When in fact, it really was more transformational in how I was seeing the world than in how the world was seeing me.
Ah.
And once I understood that, then I was able to identify those kind of opportunities. But it took me a while to understand that, similar to when you get a master's, just because you get a master's doesn't mean the world is going to fall at your feet. It's similar with a doctorate. You have to kind of make your own path. And what I really appreciate now that I didn't necessarily appreciate when I first finished is I've retrained my mind as a scholar to look at things differently and to consider different perspectives that I might not have considered otherwise. And that has helped me to kind of see different pathways.
Interesting.
I have to agree. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Janine.
Oh, I'd have to agree. I think that we all have that similar experience of just expecting to wake up and feel different from the day that we defended our dissertations and were called doctor for the first time, to then waking up and having that honor bestowed upon us. And it just didn't happen. It did not happen. And so it has been quite interesting, kind of crossing over, so to speak, going from being an ABD to now having completed the doctorate. And I think I still some days wake up and I'm looking for that difference that I was expecting to feel.
Interesting. How about you, Nance?
Well, it's hindsight's 2020, right? And when I first started the doctoral journey, I was pretty much of an extrovert type of person, and I was out front all the time and talking with people. And the closer and closer I got to the end of it, I became an introvert. And I was so focused and concentrated, and I would say intense about dissertation world and all of those stages, that when I came out of it, I was actually a different person to me. And I was a different person from that personality aspect, but also from the way I thought. So much like what the others have talked about, it's a different way of looking at things. So I looked at everything from a research perspective, from a scientific view about, well, now let's take a second look at this, or let's research that. Or before I used to be pretty much just carefree about jumping in about opinions, but having the PhD letters behind my name gives me a different type of responsibility about what I say, especially in any kind of business environment where I'm more careful and more deliberate and more thoughtful and researched about things I might say. So I'd say more reflective and a little more introverted than I used to be.
Interesting, Nancy. Both you and Todd described a transformation process. Gary expected one, that kind of the lightning bolt sort of thing, but you both described something that was maybe an internal process of, gee, the world, looking at the world differently and sort of figuring out where you fit in it. Am I hearing that correctly?
Certainly looking at the world differently. I think, like Nancy said, you may not be as quick to judge. You may consider the different perspectives that may exist. And I think it's been helpful for me in my personal relationships to get a better understanding of what other people might be seeing or how they may be thinking. I used to be much more combative, I think, in the way I would interact in a, even just a fun, debative kind of way. But now I'm more open to other perspectives. That's just kind of how I've changed a little bit.
That's interesting. It's almost as if what you guys are describing is that when you earn this degree and in fact became really somebody that in the social and academic world, we say, wow, you've reached this penultimate. You all kind of went, yes, and now I need to be even more thoughtful about how I'm approaching things, because I have this sense of, having explored something and having, entered that, as we say, entered that scholarly conversation, produced your own research, come up with conclusions. So you're very learned people. And yet I'm hearing this, that you may have sort of felt like, I'm going to think through this before I jump right in. Did you experience that, Gary?
Yeah, I did. And what I also was thinking about was the fact that people now pay more attention to what I say. I mean, they really do. I mean, they attend to me a little more, and so I'm much more careful about what I say. I'm very deliberate now about what I say because they pay attention, especially clients. Okay, clients really pay attention to just those letters behind my name make a difference. It's really interesting. I don't feel any different, which leads us to that syndrome that you have sometimes when you don't feel like you're adequate, right? That you're an imposter. So sometimes I feel that way, okay, because of that. And also the intensity of the study to get the doctorate. When you're done with that, it's sort of like I got depressed. It's sort of like postpartum. I didn't know what to do. And it was really depressing for me for a little while because I was no longer actively involved in that intense study, and I needed it. Okay, so I had to redirect that attention somewhere else. So I directed it toward business, and still I missed the intense study. I still got to go back and read and digest papers and things like that. That's one of the primary things I think I learned. I really enjoyed going through the program. So
Yeah.
I went off target, but just
no, I mean, and that's really great. I recall a story that Nancy told me and maybe shared with you about the first time somebody called her Dr. Herbert. Tell us what that felt like.
It was interesting. I graduated in October of 2019. And then we had a big family vacation that I had actually rescheduled to make sure that it was an after dissertation vacation, not a in the middle of it, which would have made me absolutely crazy. But so anyway, I did this wonderful family trip to Africa, and then we went through the holidays. And then when February came around, I was at one of the national conferences in DC, and a lot of my colleagues and friends within that industry knew that I had just gotten my PhD, but I'm just busy in the hotel lobby visiting with a couple of people in different groups, and all of a sudden people called across from another group in this bar area and said, Dr. Herbert, and I'm like looking around going, who are they talking about? It was so bizarre, and it was the first time in a professional setting with my colleagues and dear friends that I had that experience, and it was foreign and it was strange, and it was, who is this person? Oh, I'm that person now. And it helped me transition back to my new responsibility, my new like an additional dimension of who I was. So this was a new dimension that I added to who I was. And it was an interesting transition. All of a sudden it just went, oh yeah, I'm that person.
That's me.
Yeah.
And Janine, I know that you work in a school, a K-12 school. And so you're called Dr. Duran every day because that's how all the students know you, right?
Well, yes, actually, I'm a dean of health sciences and administration at a technical college. And so I am called Dr. Duran every day. And it's still it's so surreal to me that they're talking to me. And so every time I see that, it's still like, yes, that's you, that's you. So it is just absolutely crazy. And I feel like I'm consistently making that transition, even though it happened so long ago. So.
Right. Yeah, interesting that you've shared some of that. One of the questions that came in through the chat function was from a viewer who asked how your experiences through your doctoral program sharpened your critical thinking. And clearly you were all bright people before this started, but you've come through this journey, and Gary mentioned he reads more articles, and Nancy questions things, and Todd's looking at the world a little. So how did that whole process of completing your doctoral research strengthen your critical thinking and analysis?
I can certainly weigh in. As for me, I was always up for a good debate, even before I became a PhD. But now I look at things differently. And one of the quotes that I used in my dissertation at the very beginning was by Wayne Dyer: when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And now when I hear people bring up a point, I feel like I guarantee I can find a counterpoint. There's always research out there that can counter whatever it is that someone is saying. So just give me a moment. I'll come back and I'll give you something that can counter what it is that you are saying. And so I can just always back up whatever my argument is with great research and with critical thinking. So that has most certainly helped.
Wow. So that whole process of looking at the literature and evaluating your own findings really taught you to be more reflective and perhaps more dimensional in terms of your thinking, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Todd, how about you? How did that change for you? Because you're in a new job now. Everybody knows you as Dr. Fiore. You're not Todd anymore.
They don't know I used to be this person without a PhD. For me, going through the research process, a lot of the refinement of my critical thinking came through really becoming a better scholarly writer and being able to communicate my thoughts in a scholarly way. Kind of changed the way I was thinking and the way I now process things in that same kind of language. And I know that, people who are still in the process always ask, or like still in their coursework and haven't reached their dissertation, or like, what can we do to get better? And I would say really work on your writing, because number one, you're going to do a heck of a lot of it. But number two, I think for me, it really refined my critical thinking skills as well.
Interesting. And that kind of ties in with another question I wanted to pose to the panel. And that's experiences during doctoral studies, both the things that really you felt were supportive of you, and maybe some of the challenges you faced and how you dealt with them. I think that there are a number of people, we're streaming live on Facebook, and I think there may be some people who are weighing in or saying, I'm thinking about doing this, or I've just started, and what did you find was really supportive during your program, and what were some of the challenges you faced? Who wants to start us off?
I can say that I think to have people around you to support what you're doing is very helpful. My wife was extremely supportive of me, and she, first of all, I used to be a terrible writer. I might still be a terrible writer, but my writing skills improved tremendously, I think. And my wife did a lot of reviewing and proofreading of my paper. So I say we earned this degree. It's sometimes to her that she read probably as many papers as I did, helping me. So that was very helpful. What you have to do is realize that you're going to get out of this deal what you put into it. And if you put a lot of effort in it and you read the papers and you do a lot of the research, you'll get a lot out of this program. If you don't do it, it's not going to happen. And you have to make sure you set aside time. Time for me was one of the things that was a big factor. I needed to have time to do it, and to be regimented and deliberate about setting aside that time. That really is important. So you need to make sure you do that. And again, have a support system around you to make sure that you're successful. So.
Yeah, and maybe just build on that a little bit, Gary, in terms of your program itself. Were there parts of the program that you found particularly useful, or parts of it that you thought, yeah, I could have done without that? Or this is some pragmatic feedback you can help us with, and
I thought it was, I thought about that type of question. I can't think of really a whole lot that I thought was not useful. Okay. I think that the number of papers and the amount of research we had to do was very, very useful. I think you need to do that. I think you need to read every paper that's recommended and then find some on top of that to learn how to digest papers. If there was any one shortcoming, I think that I would like to see more of, it would be maybe some synchronous activity with classmates, because everything that with the program I went through, that it was all asynchronous. I mean, we really didn't see anybody live at any point in time. So you had a lot of time to prepare responses and really think through them, which is good, but you end up not having to think of things off the cuff like we're doing right now, this very minute. So
Right.
that would be, so a class that introduced that allowed that type of activity might be helpful.
Of course, you had the in residences, because I remember that's where I first met you.
This is true. This is true.
And-
I don't want to take it away anything. That I really enjoyed the in residences. Okay, those were a lot of fun. That was probably my most memorable times in the program. So I will say that I really enjoyed the in residencies.
Great. Who else wants to build on that?
Well, getting back to the writing discussion, I remember going into this project and thinking that I was a pretty good writer. In fact, one of my previous careers was as a communications director for a school district. And in that I had to do publications and all types of things. And I thought I wrote pretty well until I got into dissertation world. And then that process needed to be refined. And I had to look at writing totally differently and kind of learn how to, it wasn't necessarily learn how to rewrite, but learn how to rethink what you want to say. And so it's framing everything differently, and using a more direct approach, less flowery approach, of course, but much more direct and succinct when you're conveying your thoughts or when you're explaining your research or describing theories, whatever part of that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell you what, that has come in so handy for me when I've been doing a lot of writing for publications, when I've been designing presentations. So right now I work as I've started my own business as a consultant and doing some publications. And while I'm doing that, I really have to have that same type of fine-tuned messaging going on and designing going on and how I frame things. And there's certainly I have to be prepared for an argument always, because if I'm presenting information to people, they're going to counter that. So I have to have a lot of different ways to be able to substantiate any of my recommendations or information I'm offering.
Yeah, I'm hearing a theme here about being a well-rounded thinker and then writing as that primary mode of communication to convey your thoughts in a real scholarly fashion, not just off the cuff, like here's what I think, but here's what I know now based on the literature and based on my research. And that I think is a change. Usually in master's programs, I'm not certain about yours, but in most master's programs, we ask students to make certain that they have certain amounts of knowledge, right? And so can they relate the knowledge back to us? And in your doctoral programs, you actually were creating knowledge and we're synthesizing information, maybe to come to a different conclusion than other people had before. Is that a fair reflection? Yeah,
I think it's fair. And I also think a difference between doctoral and master's or bachelor's is that it's an ongoing process, whereby, a master's program, your goal is to get through your classes. And once you get those, you might have to have a thesis or something at the end, but it's kind of done when you're done. And even the initial coursework in the doctoral program, you asked, what could change? I mean, it still feels the same at first. It's like, all right, I took a class, took another class, and you feel like you're just checking items off a list. But in reality, especially when you get to your dissertation or project, but just in general, you don't stop. It's very iterative. You're always building on your own work or others' works, and it's not like you can just ever really check that box. I mean, I still read my dissertation and wish I could go back and edit it. I mean,
Oh, that's funny. Gary mentioned support of family, which we know from the literature is something that's been identified as really important for students to be successful. Without getting too personal here, what are some of the challenges you face during your program? There may be people who are listening in today that are thinking about pursuing a degree, and maybe if you wanted to share a challenge you had and then your strategy for getting over it, it might be helpful for somebody in that position of, gee, should I do this or not?
I think I can start, and I think this will also address a question that I saw in the chat function regarding students with disabilities, streamlining the dissertation process, because what I don't really talk about a lot is I am a person that has epilepsy, and I had 3 grand mal seizures in a year and a half. That happened in 2013 and 2014, and that significantly impacted my cognitive ability. And then and that happened during my master's program. And then I started this doctoral program. And so I was really apprehensive because it's impeded my ability to think as quickly as I used to think about things. And even though I've always been a good writer, I was used to being able to speak off the cuff really quickly about things. And so I was really concerned about starting this doctoral program. So I had the challenges of being a happily divorced, full-time single parent of 3 children, and working full-time. And so, of course, going to school full-time. So there were multiple factors that were at play within my life when I entered into this doctoral program. And for me, I've really helped to have that support system of my family, and through this process, having a wonderful partner, having my children, having my extended family. And during that dissertation process, it was important as a student with cognitive disabilities to have a great support team as far as my chair. Dr. Sundstrom happened to be my chair. And there were so many times that I was frustrated during that process that I would get like anxiety when I knew that email came back and I knew that I had that feedback. And I tell myself I dropped out of school so many times. She doesn't even know how many times I dropped out and then just came back because I knew that I was going to have that feedback, that rethink and rewrite was going to be on there. And in hindsight, that phrase really refined me as a person because it really helped me to adjust the way I manage my life. Because sometimes you just have to rethink and rewrite, right? Before you can go forward and before you make decisions, it's better to just kind of rethink and rewrite what you're doing on your path. And so just really having that great support system, utilizing all of the support systems that Ashford will provide to you as a student, as far as the Writing Center, as far as all of the additional resources that your chair or your chair member or your committee members may offer to you and suggest that you read. And even though it's additional reading, I would suggest that you do that reading and use those checklists and read those other books to help you through the process, and really take heed at what's said at those in-person sessions so that you can be more successful through the dissertation process.
Thanks. Anybody else on that one? Support systems, challenges?
Well, I can tell you that I had about 3 major things that happened to me while I was in the program. One, I ripped a tricep. Okay, so I couldn't use it for a while. The other one, I had my mom passed away. Okay, and then while I was in the process of writing my dissertation, the final 2 or 3 months, I had a DVT in my leg, the entire length of my leg, and I had to lay in the bed for 4 straight days and couldn't move, with a 30% chance I was going to die, blood clot thing. So, I had to deal with that. And I will say that if it wasn't for my wife to support me, I probably would have melted away during any one of those times. But I also can say that I use the dissertation as a way to refocus my energy onto something more positive. And I did do that. And just sit around and worry to death, or I could focus my energy on something more positive, which was completing this degree. And that's what I did. that and prayer.
You
Okay.
know, it's interesting, Gary, that I've heard a number of students say, oh gosh, I just got to go straight through. I can't take a break. I can't stop out. And I think, I mean, just listening to some of what you guys are saying, but also other students that I know who have had significant life changes or significant events that have happened during their coursework.
Yeah.
And they may have to stop out for a little while, but they come back. You know, my reflection to students is, don't feel like you just have to be on a conveyor belt that never stops. You can actually step back or step to the side or step off for a break if you need it. Did any of you take a little break anywhere along your journey?
I did. I took a break about a few months. You didn't. Okay, so Dr. Sundstrom was my chair as well, and she didn't know it, but I took a break, several breaks. Dr. Duran, I took a bunch of breaks as well. I probably quit a few times along the way, as you said. So I did. I did that. I actually quit and opened up a restaurant. Okay. So, you know, but I made it. So
yeah, right. So it's not just a straight path. Anybody listening here, there's as many ways to complete a doctoral program as there are people. They're different pathways.
Absolutely. I didn't take any breaks, but I did find that my progress was incremental. In other words, you know, there may be weeks where I did not do much or didn't make much progress. And then I would have a very productive week. Or there were a couple of times I checked into a hotel for a weekend so I could have no distractions and just, this is what I'm going to do. And I would make a lot of progress. But it definitely wasn't, for me, it wasn't, you know, a straight line by any means.
Yeah. You know, I want you to think about where you are right now, and what you're doing, how your degree is helping you or not helping you, but you know what place it has. We've talked a little bit about your feelings having gotten the degree, but what place does the degree have now as you're looking at your future, what you're doing now, what you want to do over a period of time? How is the degree, you know, now that you've earned this degree, how's it helping you? How is it going to help you? Nancy, you want to start with that?
Yes, I believe that, well, first of all, it lends you credibility right off the bat, especially as a consultant. So if you have some letters after your name and you're giving presentations or seminars at a conference, for example, or you're a guest educator at some university or some university program, certainly that gives you the key to the door. Now, what you do with that from there on out certainly still depends on your own individual talent and expertise and how well prepared you are to take that step out using your position in that way. If we could just kind of tie this back into the imposter syndrome piece, where I believe confidence in your own ability has to be coupled with the letters after your name. So all the work that you've done with the doctorate, that gives you this specialized expertise. But if you can't muster up the courage, and I do think it takes courage to be authentic about what you've learned, like our discussion here today, when you're presenting information, it's okay to be vulnerable about that. Whatever challenges you have with that, you can flip that. You can flip it so that you can use your nervousness for strength and excitement about something that you're learning. And as lifelong learners, always be able to share how you're growing and you want to learn from other people as well, because we're not the experts to end all experts. I think we actually just pave the way so that others can learn along with us, and together we collaborate our education with others. So I look at it more that way, and it's not quite so onerous onerous. See, when you write all the time, you don't speak all the time. You don't even know how to pronounce words. So, so you can just be human and authentic about it too, as you're talking with people.
Yeah. Yeah. And being able to say, I don't know, is a really powerful statement. And I'll reflect back to you that I actually, it was actually easier to say, I don't know after I got my degree, because everybody thinks you're smart because you have this degree. And if you say, I don't know, then they respect you too, because they say, oh, well, she doesn't know everything. Did you have that feeling? Yeah, I see Janine nodding. Yeah, that kind of like, it's okay not to know everything, but it's not okay not to try to figure it out. So Todd, where's your degree taking you? How do you see using it in the future? You're a young guy. You got a long career ahead of you.
Not as young as I wish. I am young in my career though, because like I said, when I started my degree, I wasn't sure what I wanted to be when I grow up. And it wasn't until I got halfway through my doctorate that I realized that I wanted to be in the world of academics. And my degree has opened up doors for me to do that, to teach, to do research. In my current position, I'm working for a university in an academic position that did require a doctorate. So it was something that opened that up. I think in general, though, what I really appreciate about my degree now is the types of people I get to meet and interact with. I've told people that I never wanted to be the smartest person in the room, but now I get to be in rooms full of really smart people. And that's really a pleasant feeling and a great opportunity, because in some ways I'm dealing with people that are like-minded and also appreciate, what it took to get through a doctorate. So, my degree has set my path for my career, probably for the rest of my life.
That's really neat to hear.
When I got my undergraduate degree many hundred years ago, I went to work for Southwestern Bell, and my manager's manager was telling me, she said, your degree is a ticket on this train. Once you get on the train, it's up to you what you do with it. And I feel, and I can tell you, it's the same thing when you get your ticket to get on the train. It might be a different car on the train, but it's a ticket to get on, to be on that car and to participate. And I found that people, again, what you have to realize is that you're not the smartest person in the room, as you said, Todd, because the car is full of smart people, but you get to interact with them and you can learn from them as well. I have found that this particular degree has given me opportunities that are available in that car, normally wouldn't have seen. And I've been able to take advantage of some of those opportunities. So that, and I wasn't expecting that originally, I really wasn't, but it just did that way. So I can tell you that.
That's great. And I'm just reflecting as I'm looking here. Nancy's teaching, Todd's teaching, Gary's teaching. Janine, you just haven't had your degree long enough. You're going to be teaching really soon too, or maybe you already are.
Yes, actually, yes. My degree has opened up the door for me to be an adjunct instructor, as well as landing this position as the Dean of Health Sciences and Administration in a college. So in addition to that, I have been able to also now serve on multiple boards and commissions. At this point, I think I'm up to like 5 or 6. I'm just having to say, no, I can't do any more, because people have been seeking me out to have a seat at the table. So it has been absolutely wonderful, as before I got my degree, I had always wanted to serve on boards and commissions. So that's been absolutely phenomenal, as now I find myself as the vice chair of 2 different boards here in the city and county of Denver, and serving as an advisory board member for multiple others. And in addition to that, most importantly for me, as a first generation student, my degree has been an example, not only to my children, which I feel like I've set the bar because basically their whole lives they have seen me in school. So now my son is a freshman at a university, and my eldest daughter is applying for colleges and will be headed to a college in the fall. So I like to say that I'm the first doctor in the family, not the only, but the first. And in addition to that, also being a woman of color at a college that majority of students in my college are people of color. And so I think it sets an example for them to see that college being led by a woman of color and gives them something more to aspire to. So it has been absolutely phenomenal and gives me a chance to reach back and bring others along with me.
That's great. That's so cool. Your stories are really making me happy today. I appreciate you sharing them. You know, I'm gonna give you guys a chance to be the wise sage, and the wise sage in the way of offering some advice and some thoughts to either new doctoral students or students considering a doctoral program. And I'll give you a chance to think about what you might say, but I think advice from people who've been through something is, and that students can relate to, probably means more than coming from a counselor or an advisor. Not to disparage counselors or advisors, but you've been through the fire. So what kinds of advice or thoughts would you share with somebody who's a new doctoral student or considering becoming a new doctoral student?
Well, I'll be happy to kick that off.
Right.
I think that there's two basic stages of a doctoral program, and the first are your classes, and then the second is your dissertation. Now, during the classes, my biggest advice to you is to absorb as much as you can, have fun with it, and really dig into those courses, because everything you're learning now is going to help give you the foundation for what you're going to need for the dissertation stage. Then once you transfer into the dissertation stage, be very, very patient with yourself. This was the one thing that I had to fight with all the time. And see, Peggy, you're smiling. And it's because the pressure you put on yourself for when you enter each chapter phase and what that means. And you can read and read and read, and then you go to start it and you still go, you just panic. It's like you freeze, you get into these weird modes. It helps so much to have a wide network of support people around you. So whether it be family people, distant relatives, close relatives, of your best friend, your spouse, your whatever, and you're going to need more than one, because you're going to burn just one out. And I'll tell you that right up front. So you need a variety of different people that you can just call and say, and just scream, or you can just call and say, this is so stupid. Now I know why people drop out of dissertation programs, blah, 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 and all this stuff. But they will always help you get over that hump, and you'll, pull yourself up by your bootstraps again. You'll take a deep breath, and then you'll call your wonderful guide, and you call Dr. Sundstrom and you say, okay, let's fix this thing. And then they're right there with all the tools you need to help you and guide you and get you through the next stage. So number one, enjoy the classes, really delve deep into them because they are the foundation. And number two, set up a bunch of advocates and different support systems that can help you through your dissertation journey. It's a fantastic journey. I'd kind of, in a really morbid way, like to do it again, knowing what I know now, because it's such a great research project, right? But it was the most challenging thing I've ever done in my entire life. And I am so excited, still a year out, I'm still so excited and proud that I was able to get past it and succeed in it. And you need a lot of energy, a lot of mental energy and emotional energy. So have people help you. They will love helping you.
Yeah, most people are happy to help when we ask, but too often students are kind of afraid to ask because it might show vulnerability. You know, Gary, you said that you were kind of lost. You can always come back and do another doctoral degree if you want to. I'll take you into my program, right?
I wouldn't take 2 million for it or 1 million to do it again. Okay.
What would your advice be?
Well, I'll tell you, when I started taking the courses, when you do a course evaluation at the end, they always ask you, what value, what was the material to you in the course. And what I'll tell you is that all these papers that you write and all these things, these books that you read, you will see them again. This thing is building onto something. Okay, it's not like you read this and you'll never use it again. I'm using articles and course material in my consulting practice now. I constantly find myself going back and reviewing papers that I've written on topics that I can take and use for clients. So so keep that in mind when you're reading all. I shouldn't read it all. Okay, read every article, digest as much of it as you possibly can, because it's going to be useful for you in the end. Because at the end, even when you do your dissertation material, you might have to use it again. So I'd just say that pay attention to what you develop. Keep track of all the stuff. Keep track of all your papers, all the texts and things like that, because you're building on something that you're going to use again.
That's great advice. We just, believe it or not, the hour is just flown by. We just have a couple more minutes, and I'd like both Todd and Janine to have a chance to answer that question if they would like. Advice for a new student?
I can give advice. Mine is very concise. And I think that people always expect PhDs to have this grandiose bit of knowledge to offer. And really what I want to offer is, I think Dory from Finding Nemo gave the best advice when she said, just keep swimming. That is what I always tell doctoral students who are still doing it. This is probably going to be the least fun thing that you have ever done in your life and the hardest thing that you've ever done in your life. It takes a significant amount of organization and time and energy. And some days you're just going to cry. Some days, you're not going to want to do it. You may drop out multiple times without your instructors even knowing it, like I said. But at the end of the day, just keep swimming and you will get there.
I love it. Thanks, Janine. Todd, last word here.
When I was a teenager, I was kind of a know-it-all. My dad gave me a button that said, ask me while I still know everything. And what I learned, especially through a doctoral program, is you have to be humble because you really don't know much at all. There's so much to learn. And being humble includes being open to feedback, because there were times when I would push back against my support system that was there trying to give support or give feedback on things I should do or not do. But I wanted to be in control, but sometimes you don't get to be in control. You have to be open to letting those people help you, including your instructors, including your chair, including your advisors, including your peers. Just be open to different feedback. But remember, at the end of the day, this is still your journey, and you get to control how it goes, but be humble about it.
Wow. I just have to take a minute and tell you panelists that I admire each of you so very much. And when we talked about putting this panel together, and I said, well, I think I could get a group of students together. And Teresa Couric, who coordinated our TLC, said, gosh, it'd be kind of cool if you'd have one from every program. And I immediately knew exactly who I would ask. And it was you four, because you're really remarkable human beings. You have remarkable intellect and academic curiosity. I admire that about you. And I'm really, gosh, I'm getting a little sentimental here. I'm really proud to call you a friend and colleague. So thank you so much for talking here with us today, and for your contributions and insight. And I wish you well